on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. Vince Coglianese.
Hey, good afternoon. 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we will speak to a state representative from Maine. Laurel Libby is here to react to her governor, Janet Mills, saying that she will keep letting men cheat in women's sports in the great state of Maine. That's crazy. We'll talk about that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We have had massive waves of migration, both legal and illegal, especially over the last few years. And we're just trying to get our arms around the amount of damage that's been caused. Obviously, the Trump administration has done a really good job of trying to capture especially violent illegal aliens and eject them from the country. That message is getting out as border crossings have plummeted to unseen levels, which is nice. The border is being sealed up nice and solid. But here to talk to us about all of the other impacts, Stephen Camrota joins us now. He's the Director of Research at the Center for Immigration Studies. Stephen, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me again.
You have a new study out on the education level of so many of the people who have come into our country. What have you found?
Yeah, so the survey data, which it may surprise your listeners, does pick up a lot of illegal immigrants and, of course, the legal immigrants, shows that there's been this big fall-off among the recent arrivals, because the survey doesn't just ask whether you're an immigrant, it asks when did you come to the United States. So maybe the biggest way to look at this is that if we look at the fraction of immigrants who have no education beyond high school, in 2018, before COVID, it was about equal to the native born, around 36, 37%. Today, among new arrivals, it's 46%, and at the same time, the native born population got more educated. So now it's about 35% among the U.S. born. So an 11-point gap has opened up. In fact, 2004 looks to be the first time in a long time that the number of immigrants who have no education beyond high school actually outnumber the number who have a college degree. And the reason is all the illegal immigrants we're picking up in the data. So just one other statistic, since I love statistics.
Yeah.
Basically, the number of college grads actually increased by about 44% over this time period among new arrivals. But the number who have no education beyond high school increased 103%. So we're just getting a much larger flow of people who don't have a lot of education, with a lot of consequences for everything from use of social services, tax payments, income, poverty rates, because not surprisingly, pretty much the best determinant of how you're going to do in America is how much education you bring with you.
So among legal immigrants who come into the country, what's the most likely way that someone who doesn't have an education is coming in?
Well, our legal immigration system, just to be clear, doesn't really do that much to select for education. It's mostly based on who your relatives are. We even run a lottery where we pull your name out of a hat, and that doesn't really have much educational restrictions on it either. And, of course, refugees and those granted asylum, that's not done based on education. Only the roughly 15%, which is sometimes referred as employment-based immigration, they do tend to be pretty well skilled. But the other 85% of our system certainly has skilled people, but it's not part of the selection criteria.
So, you just described people bringing in their family members, what we normally refer to as chain migration. How much do those numbers grow with each passing year? I mean, that does seem like kind of an exponential trend, right? The more people who come here, who are here on chain migration, the more that they'll be able to bring more family members in, right?
Yes, to some extent those things grow, but there are certain limits. So some of the biggest increases are the temporaries, the guest workers, the foreign students. They've really rebounded. So, the number of new arrivals who are the individuals you described has gone up over time. But the big increase now is this massive flow of illegal immigrants that the administration either slipped past the border or they released into the United States, or in some cases they flew in. So the number of people coming in is several million more now. I mean, we're up to maybe 3 million new people, legal and illegal, settling in the United States now. That's, twice what it was before COVID, at least. So a big change, and a lot of it's unskilled.
Now, I don't even want to begin to pretend that lots of education means that you're a great contributor to society, because we have plenty of schools in our country who screw people up by giving them bad education at higher levels, for sure. But if you have that many people coming in who don't even have a high school education, what impact might that have on the stability of the country when it comes to things like crime? We often are concerned about kind of, people who are lost, who are engaged in unseemly behavior, who didn't finish high school, and are there other corollaries that come along with that?
Right. So you point out one. Yes, people with less education do tend to have somewhat higher crime rates, so that would be one concern. But they earn a lot less on average. There are always exceptions. Right. And they tend to use a lot in services. They or their U.S.-born children are often eligible for social programs and welfare.
Yes.
Because they qualify. They have low incomes. They're not cheating the system. They actually do qualify. And also, low income means you don't pay that much in tax. Not because you're cheating necessarily or anything like that. It's just our system doesn't tax people that high who don't make much money. So just to give you one statistic, if you look at people who live in or near poverty, in just the last 3 years, we brought in 3.5 million people who live in or near poverty. Say back in 2000, in 2020, I should say, in the 3 years prior, it was about 1.4 million had come in the 3 years prior. Oh. So we've really almost doubled the number of low-income immigrants. If we look at, say, what these folks earn, it's much less now than it was among new arrivals just a little while earlier. So the decline in education has significant implications for taxpayers in terms of social service use and taxes paid. And finally, adding all these folks to the bottom end of the labor market may make employers happy. You can understand that.
Right.
But it tends to lower wages and reduce job opportunities for less educated Americans and legal immigrants already here. And that's a big question. Do we really want to do that, since these are the poorest workers to begin with?
No, I don't want to do that. So when it comes to illegal aliens taking government benefits, the way the left usually responds to this particular topic, they say, well, it's not happening because it's illegal. If you're an illegal alien, you are not eligible for federal welfare at all. What's the truth there, Stephen Camrota?
No. We spent billions on the migrant crisis by HHS and FEMA giving various grants to localities to help settle people, and localities spent a lot. On the specific question of welfare, illegal immigrants are technically themselves not eligible for most things, though they are eligible for some things like WIC and emergency medical care under Medicaid. Pregnant women are automatically enrolled. But the thing is, there are about 5.5 million children, U.S. born, of illegal immigrants now. And they're all eligible for anything since they have U.S. citizenship. And since their parents have low income, it's very common to have households headed by illegal immigrants that live in public housing, get food stamps, the kids are enrolled in Medicaid. So in theory, you'd say, well, the response of the advocacy groups is, well, that's nothing to do with the immigrants. That's all U.S. born kids. So I guess it's up to your listeners. If someone comes to America, can't provide for their kids, and then turns to taxpayers to use programs to support them, is that a problem with immigration, or do you see that as really nothing to do with immigration? I think most people would say that's a problem with an immigration system that's allowing in folks who don't make enough to take care of their own kids.
And another indication that this so-called birthright citizenship for illegal aliens is a senseless policy for the United States and should be turned back. President Trump last week had signed an executive order that, in his words on the White House's website, ends taxpayer subsidization of open borders. The order directs federal departments and agencies to identify all federally funded programs currently providing financial benefits to illegal aliens and take corrective action. Stephen Camrota, you're a data guy. You're an immigration expert. Is it possible for the president to get rid of some of this funding that's been going out the door to illegal aliens?
Well, in terms of no longer providing localities with assistance, it seems pretty clear he can do that. But we estimate about half of all illegal immigrant households use at least one major welfare program, and almost all of that is due to their U.S.-born children. So this kind of order leaves it totally in place. There's no way to stop that unless you somehow change the citizenship status of those children. See, the bottom line is once you've let a lot of people with very modest levels of education into the country, there's very little way to avoid large fiscal costs in a society where people who don't have much education don't make much money, don't pay that much in taxes, and get a lot of benefits often on behalf of their children. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they all came to get welfare. A large fraction of illegal immigrants work, let me be clear. But the problem is that if you had to put in a bumper sticker, it would be there's a high cost to cheap labor. You can't avoid this problem if you're bringing in lots of less educated people.
Right. Yeah, you can't have open borders in a welfare state. That's not feasible. In fact, Bernie Sanders even held that position at one point. And he called it a Koch brothers conspiracy to have open borders in a welfare state. We can't do that. And yet, boy, we're doing a lot of that, aren't we? We have been.
We certainly did, at least through the end of the Biden administration. I think the Trump administration is going to represent a big departure from that. But now we have to think in terms of people coming. But now we have to think about how we're going to enforce our laws and see if we can lessen this. Because the bottom line is if people stay, so do the costs. And in fact, they tend to grow over time as people have ever more U.S.-born children. That doesn't mean the illegal immigrants are lazy. Doesn't mean they're all freeloaders. What it reflects is just that, and let me be clear, less educated Americans don't pay that much in taxes. It's all by design, but you have to have an immigration system that recognizes how our tax system works and how our welfare system works, and then select people accordingly. And the Biden administration didn't do that, and most of our legal immigration system really doesn't do that either.
Yeah, our immigration.
So you end up with
our immigration system should prioritize stability and growth, and that's not what this is. This is not. This is just chaos, which is not good for the American people. All right. Hey, Stephen Camrota and the Great Center for Immigration Studies, thank you as always. Great to talk to you today, sir.
Thanks for having me again.
Of course, always. That's Stephen Camrota with, again, Center for Immigration Studies, and he's got a great new study out. Immigrants are arriving significantly less educated. It's just too much. It's just too much chaos. You should be able to, we should bring people in at a reasonable rate to assimilate into the United States on the basis of what can they contribute to the country. The deal should be really simple. You want to come here, and I want you to come here. Let's see if we can make it happen. That's the deal at a reasonable rate. Because you get too much upheaval, that's how you wreck a whole country. The borders are open. People are against that. People are against that. Even to the point that you see today that the mayor of Chicago is a Democrat called Brandon Johnson. And it does seem like they just have one awful mayor after another, don't they? Brandon Johnson is the current guy. And voters in Chicago hate him. They hate him. They voted for him, and they hate him. Today, he has a 6.6 favorability rating. 6.6%. I've never heard of such a thing. 6.6% favorability rating for Brandon Johnson. He has a 79.9% unfavorability rating, meaning he's wildly disliked. And the reason they don't like him is because, A, crime is out of control in Chicago, and B, illegal aliens are all over the city. All over the city, and Brandon Johnson's doing nothing to stop that. And so open borders has not worked out well for Chicago. Also, how is reelecting Democrats over and over working out? Windy City, not too well. 6.6%? You've got to work hard for a number like that. It's 521 now. WMAL.
Tomorrow on the Chris Plank Show, funny to listen to the media complain about government laying people off while the media's laying people off left and right. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Yeah, they sure are. Joy Reid got fired. Who could have seen that coming? She's so bigoted. It's so long overdue. Before I'd like to hopefully get to that today. She's responding to it all today, her firing from MSNBC. Before I get there, though, we've got, so Dan Bongino, our friend Dan, is headed to become the deputy director of the FBI. President Trump announced yesterday. And how many deputy FBI directors can you name off the top of your head? This is not for you FBI types. You that's cheating. You're in that world. You know that. But for the rest of us, FBI deputy director, not that often. Andrew McCabe, the guy who was fired for lying to the American people, that guy, lying to the FBI. And then he got a plum job at CNN. He's a contributor now. He's the burning bush. He just tells the truth all the time. Andrew McCabe. So Andrew McCabe is a CNN contributor. So guess who CNN had on to respond to Dan Bongino's hiring? Andy McCabe. Take a listen to this.
We're going to turn now to someone who used to be deputy director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. He is CNN's senior law enforcement analyst.
Fired for lying.
What is your reaction to hearing of this appointment?
By the way, the CNN title on the screen says Trump names right-wing podcaster Dan Bongino as FBI deputy director. In case you're wondering how the media tries to prejudice your reaction to events, the implication there is, what experience does he have? Who is he? He's right-wing. He's a podcaster. Podcaster's meant to be an insult. He's a podcaster. Dan's proud of his podcast. He likes his podcast. But Dan's an NYPD guy. He's a Secret Service guy. He was willing to literally give up his life to protect Barack Obama during Obama's presidency. I think he's more than just a right-wing podcaster.
Well, I'm stunned. I think, Breon, in the same way that I would expect most FBI people, current and former, are really shocked. I've heard from many of them in the last 24 hours. And,
I'm so stunned.
And this departure from 117 years of history and tradition is really remarkable. Not because it's
what role did you play in that history and tradition?
Historic, and that's a reason for continuing, but because the demands of the job are so unique. They are so broad, of such immense scope and responsibility that it takes people an entire career,
to be prepared to become a CNN commentator.
16, 17, 18 years before typically they're ready to fill this role. So a deep understanding of the FBI, its mission, how it accomplishes that mission,
how to deceive the American people,
tools that are to be used, the capabilities of the workforce, all those things go into it. So to bring in someone who has no connection to that whatsoever is really stunning and dangerous, I would add.
He's not captured. He's not owned by the deep state. He isn't a part of the club. It's stunning, says Andrew McCabe, who can't find a synonym for stunning. He just keeps repeating the same word because he's paid to speak on television. It all makes perfect sense. Coming up, we're going to chat with a state representative from the great, beautiful state of Maine about their insane governor, Janet Mills. It's ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:36 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As we were headed into the weekend, President Trump had another one of those great moments of his 47th presidency, this time at a meeting with governors from all across the country. And he was talking about the importance of protecting women from men who either prey on them or attempt to cheat in their sports. And the president was bringing up that he's undertaken all these efforts to protect women's sports. And then he looked over and he said, "Is the governor of Maine here? I've got a bone to pick with you."
And it's crazy, but the NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
That's what we call active aggression. That's not passive aggression. Good for President Trump. Joining us now to discuss all of this, Republican State Representative in Maine, Laurel Libby, is on the phone. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a wild moment. What did you think when you saw that play out?
Oh, my goodness. I'd really rather Maine be known for our beautiful rocky coast than the inappropriate behavior of our governor.
Yeah.
That was a pretty wild moment, but I feel like President Trump laid it out pretty clearly. Comply with federal law, Title IX, or lose funding. And unfortunately, it's probably going to go the way of losing funding.
Well, and losing federal funding is not a small thing, is it? In Maine, I imagine there are quite a few institutions that are very supported by federal funding.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going into our next budget with a $500 million shortfall due to 6 years of Democrat fiscal mismanagement. And so adding another $250 million on top of that, wow, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, that'll have a deep impact. So what is this? Governor Janet Mills, last I checked, is a woman. Why is she so keen on allowing men to cheat in women's sports?
The woke left in Maine has really doubled down on these progressive policies over the last number of years, even though it's become pretty clear that Mainers don't agree with them. I've been fielding calls and texts and emails from my fellow Mainers who are ecstatic to see somebody standing up against these policies, against allowing boys to play in girls' sports. So it doesn't align with Governor Mills and her stance and what she expressed to the president at all.
You heard the president say in that audio, though, I won't quote him directly because I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said the politics of Maine are interesting. It's not, there's quite a few lefties there. What is that, just to break that down for us who don't understand it, what is it that leads to a bunch of left-wingers existing in such a rugged state like Maine? When I think of Maine, I think, man, how do you get through those winters unless you're unless you have a lot of self-reliance and you can get through it in a rugged way?
Absolutely. Mainers are independent-minded, and we just want to live our lives and be left alone. But there are folks, these progressive folks living in Portland and the coast who think they know how to run our lives better than we do. And they're the ones advancing these woke policies that the rest of Maine doesn't want. But, the Democrats only won the majority in November by 60 votes across the entire state. Wow. So they think they've got it locked down, but I think Mainers are starting to see the truth.
Oh, that's interesting. So it was literally 60 individual votes that handed power to the Democrats. In other words, there is a chance for sanity to prevail in a coming election.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Back in 2020, we were down by 2,000. 2022, we lost by 1,400. And now we've closed that gap to 60 votes. So watch out. Maine's flipping red. This idea that Janet Mills is going to fight President Trump in court, that seems like a huge waste of taxpayer resources for Mainers. And it could come certainly at the expense of, you said $250 million federal taxpayer dollars. The governor's going to hurt her own people, isn't she? Yeah, for sure. In her next budget, she's increasing and raising taxes on Maine people, from a tobacco tax to streaming tax. You've got woke policies she's defending, obviously here with boys and girls sports, tampons in the boys' room, all of those, California policies coming to Maine. And now spending tax dollars defending these policies, and that's going to cost Mainers. We don't support this.
No, and basically no one does, to be clear. All of the survey data shows that it's crystal clear. There's a new poll out today that showed this, that Americans by wide margins don't support boys playing girls' sports because they, too, view it as cheating. And yet you have some dead enders here like the governor of Maine who's saying, no, I'm going to keep fighting for this thing. Because what it seems to me is not that, like, she's doing something that's decent or that is tolerant or that reason is prevailing. This is just all performative and designed to be some sort of anti-Trump bat signal. All she's doing is attacking the president at the expense of her own people.
Yeah, she hasn't had a significant challenger over her tenure as governor, so she's been able to rule pretty tyrannically. And so this is the first time she's really had a significant challenge, and she misses the days of COVID where she could just demand that Maine people do X, Y, or Z. And so this is a hard moment for Governor Mills.
It looks like it. Right after that exchange on Friday, as the governor said, well, I'll see you in court. I don't care, whatever. That happened right away. The United States Department of Education announced that it is launching an investigation into the state of Maine. So President Trump wasn't kidding. Immediately, it looks like there are consequences for fighting back against girls in your own state.
yeah, when you play a game of chicken with the most powerful man in the developed world, you've got to expect some consequences.
Yeah, well, we saw them right away. Yeah, that's the find out part of FAFO. Hey, Laurel, Libby, thank you very much. State representative in beautiful Maine. A reminder that there are good people in a great state. Thank you. Good to talk to you today. There she is. All right. Thank you to State Representative Libby. It's amazing. It's amazing. She, the governor is a woman. It is a woman, and this is like yet another sign of how toxic the left's brainworm is in terms of just like corrupting the way you think about all of this. This is how you end up with, at the federal level, I am staggered by this statistic, that in women's prisons in the federal government, 15% of all inmates are men. 15% of all inmates in women's prisons are men. That's we've had a lot of crazy statistics on this program. That's one of the craziest single statistics I've ever heard. 15% of all of the female inmates are actually men. They're not women at all. Yeah. That's what the left has built. And people are against it. The Harvard-Harris poll is what I was citing earlier today. 58% of voters are more satisfied right now with Trump's job as president than Biden. 58%. That number should be even higher. Should be even higher. But as you look through the data here and assess, what you find is that Americans are clearly on the president's side. Here, for instance, number one, deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have committed crimes. 81% of the public supports that. 81%. It's not even a close contest. Everybody, you may as well have a flag with Tom Homan's face on it and flying it out in front of your yard, and we all agree. 81%. Here's another one. Undertaking a full-scale effort to find and eliminate fraud and waste in government expenditures. 76% of Americans, including 62% of Democrats, support that. I love how the media pretends that there's this huge division among the American people. Like we're all fighting amongst ourselves about these things. We're not. We're all in violent agreement. We're all nodding our heads vigorously that this needs to happen. Here's another. Closing the border with added security and policies that discourage illegal crossings. 76% support that. This is not even, there's no debate over this subject. We all agree. Banning men who have undergone operations and hormones to become women from girls' sports. Let me correct the polling question from Harvard-Harris. You can't become a woman. You can play act as one. You can cosplay as one. Dress up in the costume. But all you're doing is woman face. You're not a woman. So, but the question here, the survey question, even loaded as it is, banning men who have undergone operations and hormones to become women from girls' sports, 69% of people support that. 69%. Just 31% oppose such a ban. 31% say, yeah, it's totally fine for men to cheat in women's sports. Declaring that there are only two genders, male and female, in all government forms and programs. 68% support that. Eliminating all preferences by race in hiring and awarding of government contracts. In other words, judging people on the basis of the color of their skin. Getting rid of that, 65% of Americans support that. So as I go down the list, and I've got a lot more, all majority support. All majority support here. Freezing and reevaluating all foreign aid expenditures and the department that handled them. Placing reciprocal tariffs on countries that have tariffs on U.S. goods. Cutting government expenditures that were already allocated by Congress. Ending bans on offshore drilling in Alaska and elsewhere. But support. The last one was the smallest of the group, and that was 57% support. Ending bans on offshore drilling. You know, it's funny, like just and absurd that we have a media who present all of this to us as if we are all fighting. And it turns out we agree on almost everything, on a lot of meaningful stuff. There's some big fights that we have, about tax rates, abortion, clearly a big battle in terms of American sentiment. But on all that stuff's really important. Americans agree wildly, which is, of course, one of the reasons why the media has tried to actually sell us on division, to make us judge each other on the basis of ridiculous things like skin color. How demonic is that? To have a fight amongst yourselves, we'll be busy robbing you blind. No, I'm not for that. So in this survey, the Harvard-Harris poll, the single thing that President Trump doesn't have wide agreement on, it turns out, this actually surprised me. Could be an error in the polling, or I could just be in the minority on this. That's possible. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America is the only one. He's got 39% support, 61% opposition. I don't know why people are so animated about this that they need to oppose. Let me help soothe them. We had a caller reiterate the point recently, too. All due credit to him. But that body of water is surrounded by the American continents. Central America, South America, North America. They're all Americas. It's the Gulf of America. Nobody said the Gulf of the United States of America. It's the Gulf of America. We get to share it, don't we? No, it's the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, whatever. Enjoy, being angry about that. It's perfect. Gulf of America, it's cool. And now, because everyone's bending the knee, at least for the moment, watch behind their backs, the crossed fingers and the shivs. But you got the big media companies who are like, oh, yes, it's the Gulf of America. I agree. I totally agree. So, Google Maps and all these places, you go now, it's Gulf of America. Everyone's agreeing. Now, I don't trust these people as far as I can throw them. I don't. I'm not. Oh, thank goodness. They're seeing reason now. No, they're not. They're just trying to, they're windsocks. They're political windsocks. They're trying to ride this out. They're just heading in whatever direction the wind's blowing right now. But it's fun. I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's fun because of the people that it annoys, actually. That's one of the other reasons I love it so much. And I'm allowed to have that experience. I'm sure you feel the same. It's 5:49 now, WMAL traffic and
WMAL, making sense of the border, because laws either matter or they don't. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
All right, let's see. Line 2, we find Richard in Manassas right now. Richard, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince. I wanted to know who actually named the Gulf of Mexico, and I looked it up, our friends over at Wikipedia, and it looks like Spanish conquistadors in 1550 had the first reference of the Gulf of Mexico on maps. Mm-hmm. So the left would rather have Spanish conquistadors who raped and pillaged the Inca and the Aztecs for their gold than have it named Gulf of America by Donald Trump. That's how much they hate Trump. So I find that very interesting that they would rather have people who use smallpox germ warfare against the indigenous peoples of America than to have the Gulf of America renamed by Trump. So I suppose if one people can name it, Donald Trump could rename it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. And Richard, what does the word conquistador mean?
Conquerors?
Yeah, I think so. It does. So they want to go with they love conquerors, it turns out. That's their big thing. So we're going to call it the Gulf of Mexico because the conquerors told us to. Once again, left-wing logic completely incoherent, as you've helpfully pointed out today. Richard, thank you. I appreciate that. Conquistadors. Yeah, conquerors. Leo's in Front Royal, line 4. Hello, Leo. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Actually, since we live in America, there's also North America, South America, and Central America, and not just Mexico. Yeah. So if we want to be inclusive of all the different countries, then we have to say Gulf of America. Make sense?
Amen. Yeah, no, I just said that very thing. You may have missed it. I agree with you completely. I love that, Leo. Thank you. Yeah, that's the Gulf of America. We all share the border. It's Gulf of America. Really simple. I love everyone down in Florida, though. They're all getting out on their boats, going out in the Gulf of America, telling all of their friends and family, I'll be out on the Gulf of America today. It's funny. Normally, for the people who live on the Gulf of Mexico previously, they would just say I was going out on the Gulf. But now everyone's got to really drive it home. Everyone's got Gulf of America. I'm out on the Gulf of America today. I wonder what all the Gulf Coast stations are doing, because they have to report the weather. We should do a survey. We should review it. They have to report the weather, like what are the tides coming in, going out, that kind of thing. Gulf of America. We had a lot of big news today. President Trump is also working on a peace in Ukraine, trying to work with the Russians, trying to see if we can't get some of that money back that the United States loaned to Ukraine. Remember, we loaned it, and then Biden says on the way out the door, oh, and they don't have to pay it off at all. Okay, you're a corpse. You're a mannequin. You are out. You're gone. Thank goodness. Let a real president handle everything. So President Trump trying to get some of that money back in the form of some of these precious minerals and say, let's work out a deal here. Let's get some of this back. Fighting right there for the American interest. So we'll bring you updates as that develops. Also, we're going to watch very closely what happens with our good friend and colleague, Dan Bongino, now scheduled to be the deputy director of the FBI. A cool start to another cool week in the Trump presidency. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.